All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Will Schwaller. I'm the exhibition projects assistant for the Berman for creating public programs for this exhibition of Enrique Bostelman's work. I've put together a series, an exciting series that this is the inaugural event of, where we're thinking about picturing the border just like Enrique Bostelman pictured the border in his work, but to kind of since he's no longer with us anymore, to kind of think outside the box and reach out to local artists, activists, and scholars to picture the border and see how the border takes place in arts and culture in our present day and in our present communities. I wanted to do a little bit of a plug. I'm so grateful that you're all here tonight to enjoy this first opportunity, but we have plenty more scheduled here at the museum, two of which are going to be in Philadelphia, actually, so that the exhibition can kind of reach the city folks over there. We'll be launching the exhibition catalog in at Ulysses Bookstore in Philadelphia coming up next week. And later on in November, there'll be another one of our speaker series with the artist Michelle Angela Ortiz and her collaborator, Dr. Veronica Montes, at Taller Puertorriqueño. The exhibition catalog, the launch is next week, but the catalog is here already. So if you want to look at it or buy it, you're welcome to do so here before you leave the museum. And then there will be two more events later in November here back at the museum. We'll have a dance performance by a Mexican-American dancer here in the museum gallery spaces by Amalia, and another part of our speaker series with Idalia Vasquez Achuri and Obed Arango here again in the museum gallery. So please put those on your calendar and come back to hear more. So tonight we're going to be hearing from our two outstanding artists, Cristina Martínez and Eugenio Salas. You already know them. You ate their delicious tacos outside. But following their individual presentations, they will be in dialogue with Giovanna Venegas, who is one of our many collaborators on this exhibition project. Giovanna wrote a wonderful exhibition essay in the catalog about Bostelman's series of photographs of the border. So it's very fitting that she here engage with us in dialogue with Cristina and Eugenio. Giovanna is a curator at Sculpture Center in New York and formerly assistant curator of contemporary art at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. She has also served as a curatorial advisor for the Whitney Biennial 2022 on the U.S. Mexico border region and has contributed to projects and exhibitions at MUAC, the Museo Universitario de Arte Contemporáneo, and La Tallera, both of which are in Mexico City. And so now I'm going to turn over the mic to Giovanna so that she can introduce our two speakers, and then we'll hear from them individually. Thanks.
This on? Oh, it seems like it's so light and small that thank you so much for that incredible welcome. I mean, I think how lucky we are for this public event where we can actually have food and be in community together. So yeah, I think every event should start with some tacos, and of course that that would really make it successful. So thank you all so much for that and also for hosting us. I am going to introduce Chef Cristina and Eugenio and their incredible bios, and then they'll talk a little bit about their work, and I'll ask a few questions. Chef Cristina Martinez is a Mexican chef and immigration activist in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Cristina is a native of Capulhuac, Mexico, and she is an undocumented immigrant who crossed the border from Juarez into the U.S. She found a job in Philly as a pastry chef in an Italian restaurant where she met and married Benjamin Miller, a U.S. citizen. Cristina was fired from the restaurant when they discovered her undocumented status, and she began cooking food for other Mexican workers in her apartment. As demand grew for Cristina's homemade barbacoa, she and Miller began selling tacos from a pushcart on weekends. In 2015, they opened a permanent restaurant, South Philly Barbacoa. In 2016, Bon Appetit magazine named it one of the top 10 best new restaurants in America. Cristina and Miller are active in supporting undocumented immigrants in the restaurant industry, establishing an organization, the Popular Alliance for Undocumented Workers' Rights. In 2017, Univision produced a Spanish language podcast about Cristina called Mejor Vete, Cristina. You Better Leave, Cristina, which won Mejor Cobertura Multimedia, Best Multimedia Coverage at the 2018 Ortega y Gasset Awards. Cristina was also featured on an episode of the Netflix series Chef's Table in 2018. In 2019, Cristina was nominated for a James Beard Foundation Award for Best Chef. Really incredible story. I was listening to the podcast on my way here, and it's just fascinating, and I'm so in awe of you and your life. So I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. And Eugenio Salas is a self-taught Mexican-Canadian artist based in Lenapehoking, the ancestral homelands of the Lenape peoples, also known as Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Disrupting social roles and dynamics and looking to explore the symbolic spaces that unfold, Salas's practice involves collaborative process-based projects. Salas carries out participatory performative actions employing media, print, and cooking. His previous projects include baking and animating hundreds of donuts in a stop-motion animation to work through his experience in the fast food industry, building a tunnel inside a gallery with the non-status construction worker and the exhibition curator, creating a parcel delivery system to exchange personal objects between Brazilians in Toronto and their families back home, and baking a 22-foot-long cake in collaboration with immigrant women with whom he worked at a cake factory. So with those incredible backgrounds, maybe we can start, if you can talk a little bit about your work, and then we'll have a few questions. ¿Sí? No sé quién está primero.
¿Quiere empezar usted?
Cristina. ¿Sí? ¿Ya?
Sí.
Ya, ok. Pensé que, no sé si querías presentar, tenemos unos slides que mandaste, ¿quieres platicar?
Toda una comunidad en Estados Unidos se transformó en historia renunció a sus hijos 2 veces y otras 2 veces en el tiempo contra un movimiento nacional por los derechos de los inmigrantes y a pesar de ser representada, consiguió que su restaurante fuera uno de los 10 mejores de Estados Unidos. She's using the same techniques that have been her family for generations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cristina Martínez.
¿Quieres que te pregunte un par de cosas ahorita? Sí, ok. Pues anoche ya sé que también estuviste en Los Ángeles porque fuiste parte del Fortune Most Powerful Women de 2024. So Cristina flew in this morning from Los Angeles because she was part of the Fortune Most Powerful Women 2024 last night, and it was so incredible. And I wondered too, so much of, I guess I can do both. Maybe I'll ask it in Spanish para ti, and I'll ask it in English as well. Just put on my Spanglish cap on. And then maybe you can translate the response, ¿no? Pero la pregunta que yo tengo es también creo que el activismo es una parte muy importante de tu trabajo, así como los restaurantes y la comida, pero ¿de qué manera influye ese activismo que tú tienes en la comida o la comida en el activismo? ¿Cómo unes esas dos como cosas en tu vida? And basically what I'm asking is, so much of Cristina's also work is within the food industry and innovating food, but also within activism and working with undocumented immigrants specifically. And so I wonder how those two kind of maybe separate practices come together, intersect, and influence each other.
Migración que estamos recibiendo desde el 2017, So the migrants that we've been receiving since 2017 are migrants from
Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador.
Y pues es gente como los mexicanos que emigramos sin papeles, sin educación y solamente con deseos de sobrevivir, luchar en este país.
And they are the same people as the Mexicans that we migrate and come here without papers. And we're here to survive and work.
Entonces el restaurante hace como la acogida, el recibimiento para educar a tanto hombres como mujeres.
So at the restaurant, we just welcome them to teach them and how to survive.
Y pues les educo cómo pueden entrar a trabajar a un restaurante, cómo pueden perder el miedo de estar en la línea, cómo conversar con los americanos y darles la oportunidad.
And I educate them on how to work and fearless on how to communicate and go out in the world and communicate with the Americans.
También estoy dando la oportunidad con el arte para que los clientes que están recién emigrados puedan mirar el arte que hay en nuestro restaurante y es una conexión.
So I also show their art. The people that have just migrated, they can come and show their art and mix it with the community.
También estoy conectada con cuando alguien me invita a hacer una presentación y pues dejo mi restaurante para poder aportar esto social.
And I'm also connected when I'm invited to go somewhere and I leave my restaurant. So I do this. This is my social part.
También estoy cocinando un día a la semana un postre para llevarlo a la comunidad, a un refrigerador que está popular y bueno, la gente pasa comiendo un pan.
And I also, once a week, I bake a dessert that I put in a communal refrigerator so people can enjoy that.
También colaboro con otras organizaciones, donaciones de comida. También sabemos que hay un abuso muy fuerte, muy profundo en la industria para ya sean los jóvenes recién llegados.
And I also collaborate with other communities, the other organizations, and I also know that there is a lot of abuse with the youth that have just arrived.
Sí, checando los salarios, checando que las mujeres emigrantes no sean abusadas sexualmente agredidos por los demás compañeros.
So helping to check on their salaries and also helping the women that just had arrived and be sexually abused by their peers or their coworkers.
El año pasado estuve trabajando en un proyecto muy fuerte para unos 4 meses para reencontrarme con mi hijo en la frontera.
Last year, I worked in a project to meet up again with my son at the border.
Entonces, este proyecto está abierto y pues yo quiero tener la oportunidad, porque no tengo papeles, poder encontrarme con mi hijo en algún momento en la frontera.
So that project is still open, and because I don't have papers, I want to meet up and see again my son at the border.
Y este es un proceso muy largo a donde realmente puede uno sentir la energía del riesgo de migración y lo que tengo en mis manos para exponerlo si soy arrestada.
So it is a project, it's a great project that I have in my hands that is the work that I'm doing and also the project that I am working on that I have to show at the border.
Y pues no solamente yo quiero tener la oportunidad de reencontrarme con mi familia, sino que otras personas puedan hacer lo mismo con sus seres queridos.
I want to have the opportunity to meet up again with my family, but I also want the same opportunity for other people to do the same.
Entonces, alguien tiene que liderar, alguien tiene que poner la cara, alguien tiene que alzar la voz.
Somebody has to be the leader, somebody has to show the face and has the voice.
Pero no es tan fácil las decisiones a veces.
And they're not easy decisions.
Ya, pues estamos en la lucha y eso es parte de mi activismo que estoy tratando de juntar las piezas para que realmente tenga éxito.
We're continuing the fight and I am counting all the pieces so we have the success.
La migración y la comida, pues siempre nos unen, ¿no?
Migration and food, they get us together
En una mesa, es
at
lo más
the
bonito.
table.
Ya. Algo nada más para comentar en relación a la exposición, porque hablas ahorita de esta reunión con tu hijo que lo querías hacer en Friendship Park, ¿no? Esa es la zona, porque
Sí.
están aquí, so the zone that Cristina is talking about of this reunification that she would hope to do, and we hope to do from our families, is an area of the border that is in Playas de Tijuana, in Tijuana, and that's visible in some of the photographs around the corner. So it's kind of interesting to see how, of course, these were taken in the 90s, where back then still families could actually meet at that part of the border of Friendship Park. And it was actually a project by Nancy Reagan that she started in the 80s. So it's kind of fascinating the history of that, and then how that was in recent years kind of taken away. And so that's something that Cristina would like to advocate for, again, is for that opening of Friendship Park. But if you want to look at some of the photos of how that looks, it's just around in this area.
Y el estar aquí, pues vuelvo a retomar como esa energía y pues ver que este arte pues está del otro lado, pero que es una memoria para mí grande, volver a mirar los colores de México y los rostros de nuestra gente.
By being here, it reminds me of how everything looks, makes me remember what are the colors of Mexico and the faces of our people.
Maybe we'll talk with Eugenio a little bit and we'll go back to something together, ¿no? Yo sé que tú también tienes un par de imágenes que compartir y we'll do those in English maybe so we can give you a little bit of a break.
On? No, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sure.
Hopefully.
He's got a plan.
Oh, it's playing on its own? Okay. Oh, okay. Let's talk about it and then we'll improvise.
Yeah, improvise.
Oh. Yeah, so we're looking at the Super Cake, a project that it was done in 2019 with immigrant women that I work in London, Canada. We created on the top of the cake, you can see is a photo gallery from when like everybody arrived to Canada, honoring the stories and thinking through of like timelines and how immigrants, people who cross the border, their personal timelines get fragmented. It's not a traditional timeline of like evolution or social growth. So we're thinking of like deconstructing a timeline and how like coming to another place, we need to start again, restart, switching, pivot. So it was a way to think about like our own timeline. This is a stove, improvising cooking with a stove and a pot that it was found in a garbage facility. It was picked up there and then throughout residency over the summer, utilized those to create community, like social events and community engagement within the residency in collaboration with other artists. And then at the end of the residency, the pot and the stove went back to the facility. At the residency also, I was able to collaborate with an amazing artist growing mushrooms. In this collaboration also was with the nearby farm, we collected their spam, which usually is like a way for mushroom farmers to grow the mushrooms, and usually gets discarded after the first crop. So it was getting the crop that usually gets discarded and feeding it with more enzymes to like create more food and eventually more life, and creating like a living sculpture, creating shapes, but also creating engaging with like people. And these are the origins of the griddle, the communal griddle. The communal griddle started in the context of residency, the recycled artist in residency, so-called RARE. It's the first project that was awarded to create a residency or a project to enable a connection or engagement with the labor that sustains the residency. In these photographs, we can see the process of researching, talking to people, enabling, creating collaborations with chefs, local chefs, to think about like what would be an ideal griddle for cooking outside. So it was a way to like do oral history as a loose interpretations of like how everybody has memories of making griddles or stoves or barbecues. So it was think through of creating a malleable, flexible blueprint as opposed to something drawn. It was very loose and everybody had an input and people had one idea, another person took it on to the next level. So yes, so here we see in the initial steps, testing the griddle in the facility. And then at the end of the residency, there was a private event, a closed doors events with the laborers, and one of the laborers' wife, she cooked for us pupusas and became one of my close collaborators for future projects. Throughout this performance that happened within the break of the laborers, it was half an hour to have this social engagement and celebrate this coming together to like, wow, the purpose of making a griddle out of trash materials. Testing the griddle.
And it's just the griddle that is outside, no? Is that the one? So everybody also saw it and we all ate tortillas off of that griddle too. So it's nice. to
Yes,
see
and
it
you
in
can
photos
see on
here.
the side, like it's bigger and then eventually it was really hard. It was so long, so so we cut the trays that they were on the griddle. And that talks about the evolution of the griddle, that it keeps evolving based on the collaborations, based on the progress of the history of the griddle, the needs of what is implied to activate the griddle in different places. But it's the same piece. And also in the same break performance with the series of portraits of the pupusas and also the labor portrayed with the hands of the people who work on waste, protecting also their immigration status or protecting their identity. The griddle has been activated in public parks where communities already gather. So the griddle also creates infrastructure for other people. In this case, Mercado de Latinas is a network of women who got together after the pandemic to find a way to sustain themselves. It was a collaboration to enable the griddle so they can, for one of the events at the park, they can sell and also display. It was a way to engage with public art within the context of a market. Here's at the FDR, engaging with the Southeast Asian communities. The chef is 21, is amazing. He's incredible as a chef, but also he's part of Viet Lead. It's an organization mainly Vietnamese who do advocacy for Southeast Asians who suffer the lowest rates of poverty in like America. I don't know if I should just Should I keep talking or maybe you want to ask me questions?
No, I think, this is,
it's helpful.
no, I think it was helpful for you to introduce it maybe, and then we can ask a couple of questions. But I guess, so much of, I love that it is like a living sculpture, that it has shifted and adapted, and it changes also to like maybe the needs of a specific place. Like during the pandemic, it had this other use. So I guess, yeah, I guess one of my questions is like, what do you learn every time you activate it? How so much of it like shifts maybe in a physical way, those like it actually can transform. But what else, what do you expect maybe from the audience to learn from it, or what do you like, or what do you, yeah, I guess that's just the question around the formation of it itself in terms of a community.
Yeah, so in terms of like what do I learn every time I activate it, it's the activations are very unique, and so I'm not replaying the same script for every iteration. And every participation or activation of the griddle is based on collaborators, resources available, which I'm open to like how external forces can shape a piece of artwork, as opposed to like thinking through like the artist has to create this like precious object. It's more about creating a play, like a sponge in which like different inputs can provide and grow an experience. So I'm thinking through like doing social experiences, and when I talk to my collaborators, I always say we can go as far as we can go. I mean, like I'm not expecting to be ambitious or like have set expectations, but it's more about like how far can we go, how much resources we have. So it's pulling with like motivations of collaborators, getting funds. There's many factors that even like pulling from the histories, the symbolic histories of the place. Like in this case, it was very meaningful to have activating the griddle and the sculpture terrace, part of the outdoor collection from the museum. And like a piece, the griddle is a piece that is temporary. It doesn't stay in the terrace, which talks about the nature of like the transient nature of like migration and food labor. So I feel like every iterations allows me and my collaborators to tease the stories of us as humans who activate the griddle, but also the stories of the spaces.
And that's so exciting to think that also it was interacting with the history of like the sculptures of the museum. And did you both know each other before? Is this your first time collaborating together? Have you ya han trabajado juntos antes?
Yes, so this is the first formal collaboration that we had, but in the past I have used Cristina's masa for rare fundraising, making pupusas with Zulma, who was on the first griddle. So I feel like it talks about like how I work, and I feel like Cristina works the same way, like creating a network of support and like going back and like thinking through like this time we should do this, or like this time I want to be more present, or it's been like this is the first time we actually do something together, but we're friends and we collaborate.
Yeah.
¿Quieres agregar algo?
Pues sí, creo que la fusión que hay es entre el fuego, que me encanta el fuego, y es algo es algo que cose, algo que hace caliente y que eso nos transborda a que nuestra comida esté bien cocinada, bien sazonada, y pues siempre se ha usado el fuego en la tierra y con palos. Entonces, para mí, el compartir este comal, que es arte, para mí siempre ha sido como una leña, él es poniendo el fuego. Y todos agarramos un pedazo de leña y llevamos ese fuego, esa luz a nuestro hogar. Y pues parte de esa luz, pues están llevando una semilla a su hogar en su estómago, alimentando el alma, el corazón, nuestro cuerpo y la luz.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Bueno,
La mitad y la mitad. That's poetry. Well, fire. I love fire, and fire brings us together. And it's like each of us has a piece of wood and lights the fire in that piece of wood, and we bring it home. And it's like we each get a seed, and seeds feeds us. I think. Yeah.
And I think she mentioned something about like that's why collaborating, I bring the fire and then.
Sí, que tú hiciste un espacio para darle fuego y que todas las personas, la comunidad que asiste a un evento comunitario, pues lleva una luz de ese fuego a nuestro hogar. Pero no damos el fuego, solamente damos una luz.
Yeah.
Porque si no, perdemos.
So you made an event where people come and it's not that we give fire, people come and bring and take the light with them.
Llevamos ese calor, esa humildad,
The heat, the humbleness,
esa fuerza, esa memoria de tomar un café o una tortilla
strength,
o cualquier chef
and the
puede
memory of
servir algo en ese comal.
taking the coffee or eating a tortilla is the togetherness.
And I think that's a very important point, because going back to your question of like, what's the expectations of takeaway from the audience, I'm thinking through more than the audience taking away. I'm interested of like how audiences can bring forward their energy, their inputs, their ideas, and create an experience that it's a communal experience. So people take away as much as they put in, as much as they stay, they witness, they cook. So I feel like my inclination is more about creating an atmosphere or an experience where people can invest an hour, or they can hang out and then like stay there and like, yeah.
More food, we all stick around, especially with that great music also playing. I have a question for the both of you, because I think it's important that you both have, of course, your own histories of migration, going to Mexico, coming from different places, you were in Canada. And so maybe your own stories of migration and hybridity and how that maybe has influenced your food or your art practice. Could you talk about that, because it's one thing to maybe have a practice within Mexico and make food in Mexico but this is a different place, and you've come with so many experiences of people that you've worked with and places that you've traveled. So how does that your own histories of migration and movement have influenced your practice or your work or your food? Porque siento como, lo digo en español también, siento que los dos tienen experiencias de migración como muy diferentes, pero específicas, y han atravesado como tanto del país y han estado interactuando con diferentes personas, tú con diferentes personas de Centroamérica, también en las cocinas que has trabajado, o sea, como todo eso también relacionarte con los otros, también ha impactado tal vez tu comida y cómo la haces y ¿no? Como esa forma como de migración, cómo entra a los platillos que haces y cómo innovas también en la comida y cómo tal vez eso marca tu práctica artística, esa como conexión con otros, influencia, cómo se hace como híbrido también esa práctica.
Pues el compartir con muchos chefs de TAP o simplemente la comunidad, volvemos a esa masa que se muele y que se une y que al final del día es algo duro, pero es real.
So by sharing even with the top chefs and also with the laborers, we become a mass that we get together. It's like by grinding the corn and eating.
Lo más complejo es aceptar que somos de una sola madre, de una sola tierra, porque formaron al hombre de la tierra.
So the most difficult part to accept is that we come from from the same motherland. We are one.
Cuando formaron al hombre de la tierra, cuando morimos todos, porque ese 100% que vamos a morir un día, pues vamos a regresar a la tierra.
So when the humans, or when man was formed from the earth, it's for sure at 100% that we're all going to die and we're all going back to the ground, to earth.
Entonces, al final del día, todos somos iguales. O sea, no hay más arriba, no hay más abajo. Todos salimos de un mismo lugar y vamos a un mismo lugar.
Bottom line, we are all the same. We are coming from the same place and we're going to the same place.
Unos corremos más, otros corremos menos, pero al final del día, pues algo va a pasar.
Some run faster, some run slower, but at the end of the day, something's going to happen.
Y lo más importante es que si no comemos esas semillas vivas, pues la tierra va a morir y ya no va a ser fértil ni fecunda.
And the thing is that if we don't eat those live seeds, we are going to die. And if we don't eat the live, they're not going to procreate.
Y parte de mi activismo es que estamos haciendo tantas tortillas con maíz que tiene vida y esa es una lucha en silencio.
Part of my activism is making tortillas that are made by live seeds, and that is part of the activation.
Ya, y por eso puedo ser arrestada y pues igual muerta, porque estoy haciendo algo que es en contra del gobierno de Estados Unidos.
And I could be arrested and be dead, and because it goes against the policies of the government.
So it's kind of what she was mentioning before during the kind of demonstration that she was doing outside, that there's all these kind of fights, obviously, with indigenous types of corn. That is a natural form of corn that even within Mexico, there's been a lot of laws that have shifted to make it transgénero, no? Like that type of corn. So there's a lot of issues within Mexico and also here of the type of corn that we can consume. And this is happening also with maguey and with other plants, like, tequila, mezcal, all of these like other forms of, as we know, the history of like corporations trying to really shift and impose it. So what Cristina's saying is that she still tries to work with these seeds and with corn, with the indigenous corn, and that is also a very important part of her activism. That is a silent activism.
Entonces estoy haciendo una lucha en silencio, pero me gustan los riesgos, me gusta compartir y hoy compartimos una tortilla.
I am having a silent fight, and that's why I like risks and I like activism, and I like what we share today. We share a tortilla.
Yeah.
To answer your question, my work takes inspiration from the communities that I'm part of. Being Latina, queer, immigrant, I'm in close proximity to living in South Philadelphia. I'm closely connected to Mexican, Central Americans, and Southeast Asian immigrant communities. But also as a queer man, I engage with local and more broadly other queers in a remote way. So I feel like I navigate between multiple identities and like jumping from one to the other. Sometimes there are odds in terms of like family values or like, but I feel like when these different identities intersect, I think they bring to light interesting stories and aesthetics that I bring forward to my approach of art making. And I use food as a way of, as a Trojan horse to create, to engage with institutions in the way they circulate art. And I feel like food, it allows me to push boundaries in the same way, like crossing borders, to think about like disseminating my work beyond just having something on a wall, but also create an experience within the gallery or institution to do something to communicate my messages through the senses.
I know we've had a long night tonight, so I want to make sure there's room if other people have questions. If not, I have other questions for our speakers, but I want to leave some space too for everyone. I have, well, one question I do have maybe for both of you. It's like, what would you like to see happen maybe in terms of, policy, but also in terms of maybe institutions, because that's what you're maybe engaging with museums or art spaces, but also, you do work within the realm of activism. So that is also, you're trying to advocate for something. And what would you like to see happen? That's kind of a broad question. It could be, very specific policy shifts or, in general, as humans interacting with each other, spending time together and maybe impacting each other.
I think I would love to see more opportunities for other immigrants or other people to engage with institutions, and institutions let other narratives take place within the space. And or like largely, I love to see more engaging with people who I work with immigrants, and there's not a lot of information that is translating to it. There is no multilingual. There's lots of English barriers, and I feel like either government or art institutions, they need to do more to engage with those communities and thinking through like people are facing those communication barriers and how do we activate them in a way that is meaningful and not just from a heritage month or something that is like prescribed. Thinking through ways of like bringing people to the institution, but also showing up to where the community is gathering with initiatives that activate the space, engage with the communities, and not expecting for the communities to come to the institution.
Ya, pues tengo 15 años en la trayectoria y pues siempre he pedido que pues haya una reforma migratoria, porque eso va a cambiar la historia para todo el país en general y para todo el mundo. Un impacto económico con un ingreso de dinero, porque los latinos trabajamos muy fuerte.
Con breaks chiquitos.
Yeah, sorry.
No está bien para.
I'm looking at her.
Yeah.
I've been on this road for 15 years. I've been fighting for a migration change because it's going to bring a big impact on the economical and a shift in migration because us Latinos.
Ya, pues he hecho una historia ya para 6 años y en cada entrevista que he tenido, pues siempre invito a los jóvenes que tienen la llave y el poder.
So it's been 6 years that I've been on this, and every interview that I give, I invite the youth that has the power and has the key.
Para hacer el cambio del gobierno de Estados Unidos.
To make the change in government of the U.S.
Porque estamos hablando de una masa de igualdad. Entonces, todos tenemos la oportunidad y yo sé que es algo muy loco, pero alguien tiene que exponerlo.
So because we are a mass, we are equals, and I know that it's crazy, but somebody has to say it.
Y eso es lo que yo siempre he soñado, que haya una reforma migratoria. Tal vez no lo voy a ver yo, pero otras generaciones puedan disfrutar de esa lucha.
That's what I've always dreamed of migration reform, and I might not see it, but maybe the future generations will see it.
Estuve en la Universidad de Harvard hace 2 meses y compartí lo mismo, que los jóvenes tienen el poder de cambiar la historia.
So I was at Harvard University 2 months ago, and I said the same. The youth, the young people have the power to change the history.
And there is maybe something interesting that connects what you were just saying and what you were saying is before the event started, Chef Cristina was asking about the photographs for Boselman and how amazing it would be to have some of these photographs at her restaurant. Lo que me estabas preguntando ahora sobre las fotos en tu restaurante. So it's kind of nice to also that in your restaurant you have this space to host artists and artworks and maybe also create other forms of language and communication with who kind of visits you. So maybe more projects inside of Chef Cristina's restaurant that you were talking about. But I was also very happy to see so much of the bilingual translations that you were also saying, because it's, within institutions, it's sometimes so difficult to do that. And there's, the translation and the costs and all of this. So I'm so glad that it was really important part of this project to include that. But I know, Chef Cristina, that you do have this right to work kind of advocacy group, and that it has shifted some policy within Philadelphia and Atlanta and New York. So, you really are advocating in a very real way also for certain migration policy shifts that are happening.
Sé que tiene política del derecho al trabajo y que ha cambiado mucho en Filadelfia, Atlanta.
Lo de right to work en la organización que tienes.
Sí, pues hizo una carta donde los trabajadores migrantes en los restaurantes estamos criminalizados. Entonces hizo un documento en el 2017 a donde los trabajadores en la industria pues tenemos derecho al trabajo, pero no estar criminalizados, como no estamos bien vistos. Y es una lucha todos los días.
So we sent a letter about the industry workers. We were targeted as criminals. And since we sent the letter, we got a status of workers, and we're not being seen as criminals.
Sí, este documento pues nos avala que como dueños de los restaurantes podemos proteger a nuestros empleados. Si migración viene y toca la puerta, lo sabemos, pero hay mucha gente que sigue migrando y que no tiene estos conocimientos. Entonces, tenemos que defender a nuestra gente.
So with this document, we are protecting our workers, and if immigration comes in, we have the right to protect our workers. But not everybody knows about this, and they are not enforcing it.
Ya los años anteriores estaba pues viniendo la migración a los restaurantes y pues se hizo esta ley para poder proteger y estar más seguros.
So immigration was coming to our restaurants, and that's why they passed this law to protect the workers.
And sorry, there's now like a shift, because I want to take it back maybe to Eugenio too, and some of the work that you do. But as inspiring too as Chef Cristina's story is, and how she is in a way also like a self-taught businesswoman starting this too. You're also a self-taught artist, or that's something that you highlight in your biography and in your work. So I guess, since we're maybe with students or other kind of thinkers in that way, what words of inspiration maybe for both of you do you have for other artists that maybe are going down that path and think that they, what is the self-taught artist maybe path has shown you that you want to share with others?
I think for me it has worked I would advise people to have a structure to keep learning, to produce your work and disseminate your work, which is similar like what the school does, or I think it does. To have something that is easier, there's so much information, so it's important to have a system to create knowledge and also disseminate knowledge. And one thing that also I would emphasize is the need to contribute and engage with the art ecosystem at large, and show up to galleries, talk to people, create collaborations. Collaborations is an amazing way to meet other artists and like negotiate your work and like grow up as an artist. So I think it's important that somehow a self-starter needs to be connected to a larger community, and then just find ways in which you can connect through a residency or through like participating in the openings or the ecosystem where you live, I would say.
Mm. Y para ti tal vez que también empezaste un negocio, o sea, como con toda esta experiencia que has tenido, ¿qué consejos das como a otras personas jóvenes, migrantes que tal vez quieren empezar negocios o quieren también como emprender una vida independiente de diferentes maneras? ¿Qué es como estos consejos que tú das a gente joven, a gente que está aquí, que tal vez inspiras, ¿no? Así como Eugenio acaba de comentar.
Ya, pues yo opino como estamos juntos por eso, porque sí, los museos son, pues es demasiada educación, hay mucha información, solo que pues Centroamérica no estamos adaptados a la cultura de la lectura, de salir y visitar los museos. Entonces, si la gente no tiene miedo de salir a un museo o ir largo a Nueva York, donde hay mucha información para mirar el arte y todo lo que se expone, pues por eso es que nosotros acercamos el material a nuestras comunidades para poder compartir lo que a nuestro alcance está, pero obviamente los jóvenes pueden hacer grandes cosas y mover muchas cosas, muchos proyectos para nuestras comunidades, pero desafortunadamente no hay educación, no tenemos ese acceso porque no queremos prepararnos. Entonces también es parte de nuestra responsabilidad como adultos educar a nuestras generaciones que aprendan, que estudien, que se cultiven y pues que disfruten.
Chiquito, como que estamos en una conversación.
So that's why we are together.
Yeah.
We share the same ideas, but in Central America, there is no tradition or culture of education. They don't go to the museums, they don't read. So, and people don't go to New York where there is a lot of culture. So that's why we have to bring the culture to our communities and teach them as the elders. We have to teach our younger people how to become more cultural, educated, because it's our responsibility to become educated.
I'm gonna try again with our engaged audience. Anybody have any questions?
Do you feel la visión que ustedes tienen es muy grande? ¿Se sienten a veces oprimidos por la magnitud de esta visión?
No.
No, porque todos los días estamos trabajando con el corazón, con amor que no sientes. O sea, pasa un año, pasan 2 años, han pasado 15 años y esa pasión para cocinar y ese amor de ver nuevas caras está ahí. Porque en ti veo un hermano, en ella veo una tía, o sea, es una pasión que el trabajo no se siente, es el amor que nos hace servir a nuestra comunidad.
So I have worked for 15 years, and it's the love and the passion that makes us keep on going and keep on serving our communities. And it feels like it's not a burden. It's not a heavy job.
In my case, I would say I don't feel oppressed. Is that the translation from your question? It is exhausting sometimes, yes. It's a lot of work, yes. But I'm motivated, and I feel like I'm not ambitious to have like a big mission. I'm interested in like the smaller ways of activism, like Cristina mentioned, of like making a cake and just put the cake on the community fridge. Like smaller things that create poetry and talk about like politics and create engagement, an interest to like keep the ball spinning. I think she mentioned something very valuable about like passing the torch, and I think I feel like we both, in our projects or experiences, we try to pass the torch and create like experiences where people can get inspired, and then like other people can pass the torch to create community and engaging with other people.
No other questions? Maybe that's a great moment to end. Cristina did mention that she brought a cake for us to all share. And also that there is some cafe.
Una torta para compartir.
You can all give them a big round of
Ay, gracias. Así.
I just want to say a big thank you to the museum, to Will for all the extra labor and believing and trusting our craziness, and like thank you for like never being afraid to say no, and like and also like trusting and like putting all the labor and love. And thank you for Cristina, my collaborator, was amazing, and Joanna, amazing. Thank you so much for framing this conversation and to thoughtful questions, and everybody for coming and bringing your beautiful energy.
And Deborah for organizing this incredible exhibition of Bosselman that is the excuse to bring us all together. So it's nice the catalog is out and it's really special. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to take a look at it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Gracias. Vamos a tomarnos un cafecito, ¿no?
Claro, con pastelito.